Hi everyone. Welcome to Tara Institute. My name's Judy and I'll be talking for the Mondays in May. So tonight, I've been studying Buddhism for a long time. I don't know whether that's here or there, but tonight I'm going to talk about the mind, because Buddhists always talk about mind and body, and then I'll talk about attachment, and in between some meditation. So, meditation... Oh, sorry, Damien. Meditation, there's basically two different types of meditation. There's an analytic meditation and a sort of single-pointed concentration meditation. So over the course of the month, we'll look at and practice some meditations, different on different topics and different things. So first of all, Buddhists talk about the mind as against the body, as sort of different from the body. The body is made up of elements, different physical elements, and the mind is really clarity and awareness. So it's not physical, doesn't have any physicality, it's awareness and clarity. So later on I'll talk about the Buddha. Through meditation and great compassion, the Buddha used his mind, of course, in his body, to attain incredible states of mind. Through concentration, just through concentration, and giving up attachment and things like that, the Buddha attained incredible qualities, like all the qualities that reduced suffering, that meant that he no longer had any suffering. And the thing is, we all have this mind. We all have the same mind that the Buddha has, which is what attracted me to Buddhism, sort of in the first place, because it means that we can become a Buddha, basically. A long path and a lot of sort of training of our mind, but we can do that because we have the same mind that the Buddha, or when I say the Buddha, there's been lots of Buddhas. So this mind, being clarity and awareness, the reason Buddhists focus on it is because all our thoughts and emotions sort of appear in the mind, like they arise and then they dissipate, like the mind's likened to the sky with clouds that sort of scud across it. So our thoughts arise in our mind, which is in this nature of clarity, and then what we usually do is we grab onto them. We grab onto these thoughts. We run with them. We think they're real, but they're not real. I mean, that's a bit far advanced to say that, but they're not real in the sense that anything that can come and go, which we call adventitious, is not permanent, and so it's not part of the mind, because the nature of the mind is clear and knowing. It's a sort of energy, it's an awareness. It's not a physical thing. This is all according to Buddhism. So the thoughts and emotions and things that get us all upset and all uptight and drive us crazy and make us angry and cause us attachment, they're all adventitious, as I just said, and they're not real in the sense that they're not permanent. Because things that have causes are not permanent. Because if something's got a cause, it wasn't there before the cause. So Buddhists, this is getting into karma, say. Buddhists talk about karma being cause and effect. So anyway, back to the mind. what we aim to do is to sort of be aware of this clarity, and through meditation we don't grasp onto emotions and things that upset us. So we experience a sort of a space that's not our emotions, that's not... Because we all know, like, we've all been angry at certain times and then that's sort of dissipated, and we've all been, full of attachment and desire, and that hasn't lasted forever. So these things come and go. So we need to, we need to train our mind to experience this clarity. And we can do that through meditation. It is a long path, to attain those higher states of concentration. So I thought we would do a meditation on the clarity of the mind. So the mind is like, they use analogies of, say, like it's like a pane of glass. So if you shine a red light through it, it appears red, or any colour. Also, like as I said before, they liken it to a clear autumn sky, where the clouds, scud across the sky, and so that's like equivalent to our thoughts. In order to experience this clarity of our mind, we can do a meditation in a moment. Breathing meditation is also, we will start with a bit of breathing meditation. So when we're attempting to meditate, sometimes sort of all our thoughts come in and, we make ourselves more aware that we're trying not to focus on these thoughts. So just don't go with the thoughts, just try and, if it's hard to visualise the clarity of the mind, visualise like space or something like that. So we usually sort of have a motivation, because our thoughts or our motivation precedes the practice. So if we motivate and sort of say that we're going to do this meditation, our motivation for doing it is to experience this clarity of our mind, of course. But why do we want to do that? We want to do that to sort of feel better, and we want to do that to have better relationships, in our life, and just to be able to have control. Because if we look at the mind, we sort of go with our thoughts and that. We don't get a chance to really think, to distance ourselves from the things that obsess us, and the things that upset us and disturb us. So we can do a quick meditation now. All right, the body suffers physically. We have the body dies, the body gets sick. The body is in the nature of suffering, really, but that's we'll talk about that later. So the body dies, it decays, it gets hurt, it hurts, it suffers from disease, and the mind too, because of our emotions and our out of control thoughts. But we can't do much about the body. It gets old and it dies, but we can do something about the mind. We can work on our mind, and ultimately, even to the extent that the Buddha did, of having no fear and no problem with dying and impermanence. Not all of us can be supermodels or fabulous athletes, but we can work on our mind and do that through meditation. So, okay, we'll just sit in a comfortable position. And relax. And just think my reason for doing this meditation is to experience some clarity of mind, in order to have some control and not be under the influence of out of control emotions. So we'll focus on our breath. Just focus on the breath going in and out the nostrils, or on the air going down to your diaphragm, whatever's easier. And one can count breaths in order to focus. To just focus on the air going in and out of our nostrils. We'll do that for a minute or two. If thoughts come, just don't engage. Keep the focus on your breath. And experience your mind as a clear, completely clear, open sky. With the clarity of just the essence of the mind. Just relax into your breathing. And just experience that the thoughts, any thoughts or emotions you have, they arise in the mind, but they're not the nature of the mind. All right, and then we just come back to our breath. And we dedicate, usually, we dedicate what we call merit or good things or a positive experience that we might have, even if it's a little glimpse of the nature of our mind. And we dedicate that to wanting to have more control over what goes on in our mind, and to furthering this practice. So we can just come out of that for now. Are there any questions about that? Any difficulties? There's lots of difficulties with meditation. But practice, if one practices, it does work, because I've seen people who have teachers and people who have incredible, ability through looking at our mind and through analysing or through experiencing or attempting to experience the clear nature of our mind, we can develop incredible powers of concentration. And through concentration, using concentration, we can then focus on a single-pointed aspect that we might want to, like emptiness or compassion or any of those things. And so through the mind, we can attain complete and utter, like the Buddha did, complete and utter abandonment of suffering and attainment of positive qualities. But as I said before, it's quite a long path. So I was going to also talk about the Buddha. There's lots of Buddhas, lots of enlightened people. Well, the Buddha just means the awakened one, awakened to the full potential of the mind, and having attained certain qualities, and then abandoning the things that cause suffering. So the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, was a prince. You probably all know the story, but it was a Prince Siddhartha, and he lived in a palace in India or somewhere, and when he was born there were natural portents of nature, saying that he was going to be a great seer, he was going to be a great wise one, and he was going to go off and lead people out of suffering, because an old wise man came to the palace and said this to the king. Well, the king didn't like this idea at all, because he was the favoured son. He was the son and heir, and so the king didn't want him to go off and be this fabulous guru, even though there are a lot of physical, natural portents saying that. So, but anyway, he saw people. He would go out of the palace, and he saw a corpse, maybe being burnt or cremated, and thought, "Oh, good heavens, is that how we end up?" And then another time, or maybe the same trip, he saw a sick person, and thought, "Uh-oh." And then an old person, like a really old person. And he thought, do we end up like that? And then a crazy person, I think. So he, out of incredible compassion, because the king, gave him everything. Everything to entice him to stay in the palace. But he gave up everything, even the wife and kid. So that's, but he gave up all attachment because of this really strong desire to seek truth and knowledge. So anyway, he goes out and he convinces his charioteer to exchange clothes, and so he ends up in sort of raggy clothes. and he goes out into the forest and attempts to have an ascetic life, a life of austerity, to see whether that's, having given up all attachment, to see whether that's, that's the way to go, that's the way to find the truth, and that's the way to. But in the end, he ended up starving and skeletal. There are pictures of that. There's a picture of a skeletal Buddha that one can see. So he realised that he wasn't going to last very long in that condition, starving and skeletal and everything. So a young girl came up and gave him some porridge or something, some yogurt or something. So he accepted that, and then he sort of went under the Bodhi tree and decided to sit there and concentrate and focus until he reached some sort of nirvana, I suppose would say, some sort of realisation, and he did. He became enlightened. I've heard or I've read that he was actually enlightened before, so this is all a symbolic sort of tale. But the main thing about it is that I think, and that's what I'll talk about, is attachment. Like he gave up all that, his attachment to all these worldly goods. So does that mean that we all have to do that? Do we all have to give up attachment in order to attain a level of concentration and nirvana? No, not really. But the thing, maybe for ordained people try to give up attachment and things like that. But for us, we need to think, well, is attachment a problem for us? Is it, what is attachment anyway? It's the desire to have something and not to give it up. It's synonymous with desire, wanting something and not wanting to separate from it. So when we talk about attachment, we need to think, is it a problem? Because most of us don't think it is. And as Geshe-Doga said the other night, he said attachment's really hard to deal with, even though it's a big problem, because we think, look, it's good to have things. It's good to, go up in the world or to have things and to have a good life. And that's fine, that's fine. Buddhists are not saying that that's not a good thing. But with attachment, it's like, as I say, Geshe-Doga was saying that it's like oil on paper, like a blot of oil on paper. It's really hard to get rid of because we don't think it's a problem. Whereas anger, we admit, I got angry. Anger, we can see it is a problem for us because it disturbs our mind. But Buddhists would say that attachment disturbs our mind and it's harder to work on and acknowledge. So we need to think, what is attachment for us? I mean, it's desire, it's never satisfying, it never satisfies us because we attain something, we attain material goods, or we end up in a relationship, and a lot of the time these relationships don't go, they're all fabulous at the beginning, and then in the end you can't stand the way someone brushes their teeth or, looks sideways. So we need to look at how attachment works for us, if we've got any maxed out credit cards or things like that. So with it as I said, there's no real lasting satisfaction because we've all had lots of things and, have they brought us lasting happiness? All the things we've had. And does it ever end? I mean, the initial attachment, the thing that we think's fabulous to have or we strive to have, how long does that last? How long does the pleasure in that, from that last? Not that long, because what we're doing is we're thinking that the objects, we call objects can be people as well. We're thinking that those objects have the qualities embedded in them to bring us happiness. And we also have this sort of sense of I that looks at these objects and sort of we embellish them. We think that these, so from this part of the self and part of the object, we think these things are going to give us everything that we need, or for the moment. But then we realise that our expectations of those things didn't last, and both because they don't contain those qualities that we attribute to them, and also because our grasping, our mind, the thoughts, our grasping, is a false reality. So that's the Buddha. Once he attained enlightenment, he said that there's three poisonous minds. One is attachment, other anger, and the other one is ignorance. And that's quite complicated, the ignorance one. It's not ignorance of not knowing how to fly a plane or how the telephone works. It's ignorance about our basic nature. It's ignorance about the way this I grasps onto something having these qualities, and the way it thinks that these things have these qualities. So I thought we could look at, there's different ways, but first we should think, well, is it a problem? I mean, is attachment a problem? Do we think it might be, or is it like the oil on the paper? So I think we just need to think that. How does our mind work with wanting things? With, what about relationships? What about acquiring things? Like I know that when my husband got a new car, he was so rapt, like he was really rapt. But then when he got a dint in the car, no, that's not like... So the car didn't have that, that ability to maintain his pleasure. And so how do we deal with this? I think what we do with attachment, we meditate on... we sort of meditate. There's lots of different approaches we can take to looking at attachment in our mind. So we can look at how things are impermanent, very impermanent. They get old and dinted and things like that. We can look at how our mind grasps onto and thinks that those possessions are going to make us happy. And I think it's good if we do look for ourselves personally. Even though I'm saying this, it's good for us to examine, ourselves, whether it's a problem. Because apparently it is. So we can do another meditation on attachment. I've got some notes here. See. Yeah, so I mean, with the story of the Buddha, that's just like an example to us, and I think it was mainly also with great compassion, because he had such compassion and didn't want to see suffering, and he wanted to sort of find the answer to suffering. He used his mind, to attain those incredible qualities. Clairvoyance. The Buddhists say clairvoyance is just sort of a side distraction, sort of. But also he could what we call penetrate the nature of reality, which is to actually see that phenomena or objects and things don't exist in the way that we perceive them, because the way we perceive them is the thing that's causes us problems. And also he could see that the nature of the I, the self, grasping, you know, I don't like this, I'm not happy about this, I have to have that, you know, so maybe I'll rob, steal, kill to get that. So we can do another meditation on, we'll do some breathing first, and what we usually do is the motivation. But first I'll just talk a bit more about the faults of attachment. So attachment deals with projected fantasies. It's never satisfied. It just leads to, we can't make intelligent judgments about phenomena when we're full of desire or attachment. And we all know really that we can see in our own lives that we've had these, like, you know, crises of attachments. Maybe not all of us, but we can see that we've had things we've had to have, and they haven't earned us any lasting happiness. So to see the faults of attachment, that's usually what happens in Buddhist theory is we see the negativities, the disadvantages of things, and that's meant to motivate us to do something about it. So like in terms of anger, we see that it's corrosive and destructive, and so we are motivated to practice patience. So usually if we see the faults of attachment, we can do something about it. All right, so we can do another meditation. For the meditation, we're just going to do our motivation and breathing meditation for a few minutes first, and then just analyse. So what we do is we bring up like an idea and we focus on it, because like with the idea we can strengthen it. You know, we can, through meditation, we can sort of make it more firm in our mind, and we can attain those qualities. So we look at our, relax and get into a comfortable position. And we think that we're going to look at our own attachment. And we need to see if it is a problem, so we analyse our own incidents of where we think attachment might have sort of disturbed us. So our motivation is to understand attachment and how it affects us, in order to have a more relaxed, happy sort of mind, and hence happier relationships. So we focus on our breath. So we draw in our breath to our stomach and then breathe out through pursed lips. Do that twice. And then focus on our breath, just getting an image of our breath coming in and out our nostrils. Cooler air coming in, maybe warmer going out. And think we're not going to let any thoughts invade. Focusing on the breath. And think of an experience of your own where you might have had strong attachment for something or for a person. And think, at the outset, did we think that that object that we wanted to acquire, that it was the best thing ever, or that person had the qualities to make us happy, whatever our personal experience is? Just focus on how our mind embellished the external qualities. And did that thing, person, bring us ultimate happiness right up until this very moment? Did it have those qualities? Were we completely obsessed, besotted, unable to think clearly? And what about the mind at the time of attachment? Were we in control, really? Were we exaggerating things? Could we realise and give up this attachment at the time? Are those thoughts and feelings still prevalent? Are they, for that object of attachment, is it still, or has that all gone on to something else? And then just focus back onto the clarity of our mind. Focus on our breathing. And the nature of our mind, which is clear and knowing. awareness and clarity. The nature of our mind is not the disturbing thoughts of attachment. Focusing on our breath. And then thinking in future, if we feel that we have strong mind of desire or disturbing desire, that we'll look at how our mind approaches it and whether those objects have those qualities, so that we can soften our sort of approach. And then we dedicate our attempting to understand this to trying to develop the practice. Okay, we can relax out of that. So, are there any questions about all that? It's good for the neck. No, everyone's all fine with that. You're all focused on. Yeah.
Earlier, I think you mentioned that in Buddhism we look at the negative situation.
Yeah, we look at the disadvantages of, like say, for anger, like say, we look at what are the problems with it. We'll talk about anger next week, or with attachment, we look at the disadvantages, and so that's meant to then motivate us. We think, well, it's like, normally we might think that like our attachment is so well embedded, and it's not a problem. That we've all got to have nice things and get on in life, and so we look at are there any disadvantages, usually to the thing we're trying to. So that motivates us to sort of, try and do something about it. So like in terms of anger, it's more apparent with anger. We think, well, I've just gone and lost it, I'm disturbed by things not going right for me, I'm not achieving any sort of peace of mind. So we look at those and then we think about practicing patience. So we're sort of more motivated to...
I was wondering if you could perhaps expand on that concept in relation to self or I.
Yes, well, that's right. They say that, look, there is an I, I'm sitting here, and but there's this other sense of I that it's very hard to locate. Like in meditation, we try to analyse where this strong I is in the body. So that's a meditation you can do. Is it in the feet, the legs, the arms? The one that sort of, the one that's the inherently existing I they talk about. That's the problem. I mean, the I sitting here and I'm talking, and I. That's just the merely labelled I. That's labelled onto my body and mind. Yes, but the sense of I that gets upset and gets angry, and that sense of I, we need to look at that. We can do a meditation on that later in the month, but that's the one, the whole thing, like, I don't like this, I don't approve, and so we get all het up about that. So that's and we think it exists inherently, we think it's got a real power and a real a reality of its own, but it doesn't. It's a sort of a strong fabrication, this sense of I that gets upset, and so through meditation one can, one of the meditations to do for that is to analyse where it exists, and then to see that it doesn't. But then you can get into a bit of a problem with nihilism, with that. People can say, "Oh, well, I don't exist, so, if I don't exist, then I can do anything. I can sort of be bad or be what, or So there's a difficulty with thinking that if you analyse and can't find the I, that it doesn't. I don't exist. I'm just a fabrication, a fantasy. But we can do some more meditation on that. Any other questions? Is that okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Questions. Everyone's all accomplished meditators. Yes. Yes, well, yeah, Buddhists, the teachers I've had lots of teachings from say that they call them objects, like people can be objects, in a sense. It's not to depersonalise people. Yes. Well, that's right. There's some pretty drastic, there's some pretty severe ways of dealing with attachment to a person. One of them is to imagine that person, as just bones and, flesh on bones, like to reduce it right down to that. But yeah, we talk about, because objects are external to us, but and so because they're external to us, we think they have these qualities. We project these qualities, but they don't. They don't have those qualities, and that's where we come unstuck, because we think, that in, say, a relationship, that someone has all those qualities, but as I said before, that soon wears off. Is that what you meant? What?
Attachments to certain beliefs.
Yes, true. Yes, there are attachment to certain beliefs, and well, I was listening to the news today, and there was a certain footballer who had certain beliefs, and he's quite attached to those beliefs. So, did that cause a problem for him? Like his beliefs in how he perceived certain people. So attachment to beliefs can be. So that's why they say also that you really need to analyse. We need to, in Buddhism, not just accept that what I'm saying. Think, is attachment a problem for me? Do I see things of having these qualities, but say from the past, do those things still have those qualities? Objects, I call them objects. So objects can be people or things.
Good things, Judy, like do you have attachment to your virtues or virtues?
Well, yeah, the good question, because attachment is a sort of a desire and it's seen as a sort of a negative thing, but love is an unselfish, not desire, but love and attachment, they call them like they're two different sides of the same sort of coin, so to speak. So yes, you can have like being, you wouldn't be attached to compassion or anything. So yes, there are.
What about attachment to the virtue of being compassionate?
Well, yeah, look, I think some people could get attached to that, like they sort of, they've got to go out and be compassionate and that sort of thing. But no, I think compassion is more just compassion. The definition is not wanting someone to suffer, not wanting suffering and not wanting to harm anyone. But you wouldn't be. I think real compassion you wouldn't be attached to, because attachment is a misconstrued idea. So compassion, is a really big, a big aim in Buddhism. Because without compassion, really, one doesn't strive to sort of help others. So that's another concept in Buddhism, bodhicitta. You might have heard other teachers talking about that. So bodhicitta is about wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But no, I would say there wouldn't be attachment to compassion, although it could be misconstrued. Someone could be thinking they're compassionate and...
What I'm asking is attachment always something to avoid, or is it...
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, is it? Well, that's the thing I was saying about how we do think that it's, we don't think it's such a bad thing, attachment to things. So we need to look at, is it a problem for us? Is it so we need to, yes, it usually is a negative thing. It's usually, in Buddhism, it's to be worked on and avoided. Yeah. Because they say, the teachers I've listened to say that, attachment is a misconstrued idea from both the side of ourself and because we see, those qualities in someone else. So we have to see, is it a problem? It mightn't be for some people. It mightn't be for a lot of people. Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you find that you're, sort of becoming obsessed with something, or you look back in the past, has it been a problem acquiring things, and have they satisfied, have they brought us lasting happiness? So yeah, it's worth just looking. That's the main thing. One needs to look at, are these things a problem, or is it just for some people a problem? I'm not trying to, well, the lamas would say when I first started listening to them, yeah, we're all got a problem. We're all crazy. We're all mentally crazy. Like really, they really sort of, put it on you. So that's, I'm just saying to analyse and see whether we think it is. Maybe we don't think it's a problem.
Some might see it as being extremely selfish. For example, Buddha leaving his wife and child.
Yeah.
Would have caused them a lot of pain and anguish. So, just what are your thoughts around that?
Well, that's right. That's why I sort of indicated, leaving the wife and child. I think that the greater mission, the greater thing was trying to, because if the Buddhas don't leave, if they don't leave their wonder palaces, their fantastic palaces and their attachment, then they wouldn't have attained that. But yeah, I mean that maybe the princess, she didn't, get too upset. I don't know. But it is, that's why I brought up attachment, because the Buddha did give up. He did. He was just an ordinary Indian person. No, he wasn't an ordinary Indian person. Sorry, I take that back. He was a prince. And it's a lesson. It's like a parable sort of thing, so... but do we all have to give up attachment. I mean, do we all have to give up things? No. I think we need to look at, how does it affect our mind? You know, is it a problem for us? Even on a small scale. Can we in future look at if, you know, we're trying to acquire things or be in relationships, or, you know, are we operating from a sort of a point of attachment? You know, or are we not? Do we have no attachment? So I think that's what I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he did leave his palace. So, you know. And I'm not saying, and only for ordained people, like ordained people might try to give up. You know, they would be expected to, like, not put family first. You know, because their aim is to benefit all sentient beings, see all beings as the same, all deserving of compassion. Not, you know, this person is, you know, I'm attached, they're more deserving of. Yes, any other questions?
Yeah, I'm struggling to understand the difference between sort of love and attachment, I guess. I'm struggling to see how you can love something without being attached. So, for example, I love someone, I want them to be happy.
Yeah.
I'm then attached to the outcome of them being happy, and now I'm going to be like, devastated if they're sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
I'm not understanding it, right?
No, that's no good question. It's good to love people, but we try to have the love for all people. All, you know, everyone. All, everyone. No, oh, I love this person and not that person. You know, so I mean, that's the ultimate aim. And, you know, so if you really love someone, but you don't particularly like that person, the aim is to see everyone as striving to be happy and deserving of compassion, love. So love is different from the attachment. You know, in terms of Buddhism, in Buddhist terms, it's the attachment is just that this person is going to give me, you know, I love them because they've done good things for me, you know, but then when it dies off. But the aim is, yes, to have love for all beings, the same. Do you think that's okay? No, we all struggle with all these things. I've been struggling with it for years. I'm an expert on attachment, because I have a lot of attachment. So, all right, well, I'll leave it there. And no more questions? No? Thanks for coming, and maybe see you next time. That's all right. Thank you. Oh, there's tea and coffee, tea out in the dining room if you want, and some cake and that. So feel free.